The Human Security Officer, Part 59. Lead's dead wasn't a name that inspired a sense of welcome, but Penn seemed excited as she prepared to enter the dimly lit bar, her eyes sparkling with mischief and a hint of nostalgia. Gareth, a Waylan newly acquainted with the intricacies of human culture, followed her, albeit with a sense of trepidation that had become all too familiar in recent weeks. Lead's dead. Possessive? He asked, quirking an eyebrow as he stepped into the hazy atmosphere. Yeah, but he's also dead as far as I know. And it's lead like the metal, not lead like leading someone around, she clarified, leading him toward the entrance. He frowned, trying to parse her words. I see. As she pushed open the heavy door, Penn began to elaborate. According to the story, Lead was a veteran who opened this place up for his buddies when the system was just starting to be colonized. The name Lead was his nickname. Ah, I'm aware of an old adage about throwing lead, yes, he said, recalling snippets of human folklore he had learned. Well, that's what he would have told you. He was a machine gunner, but, she chuckled softly, in all honesty, it was more likely because he got pegged for doing dumb shit. At least that's what I've heard. I'm not sure I understand, Gareth replied, still intrigued. Most nicknames aren't serious. They're jokes, bordering on insults sometimes. How does Lead play in? Well, it's incredibly toxic to humans. Particularly harmful to the brain, so it's often used to jab at someone's intelligence. Ah, so Lead because he acted as if he might be suffering from its effects, Gareth concluded, his interest piqued. Exactly. All in good fun, though. An insult said with love, she added with a playful grin. Gareth was still grappling with the concept of insulting someone lovingly. It seemed so counterintuitive to his sensibilities. SCY, well, your nickname does not seem to be a joke. No. It isn't, Penn replied, her tone shifting drastically, as if the subject hit a nerve. Before he could inquire further, they reached the door. A man loitering outside gave Gareth a sidelong glance before turning his attention to another figure, dismissing him without a second thought. Penn brushed past the trio without concern, leading Gareth into the bar. As soon as they stepped inside, Gareth's senses were assaulted by the atmosphere. Even the dingiest of the backwater spots he had been to couldn't hold a candle to this establishment. Smoke hung thick in the air, its acrid scent making him adjust his respirator to filter out as much as he could. The lighting was dim, casting a dull glow over the rough-hewn wooden tables and mismatched chairs, and the walls bore no color or decoration, just bare metal and shadows. Instead of a ceiling, the place was exposed to scaffolding, ducts, and other infrastructure, creating a raw and industrial vibe. Despite the crowded interior, a strange quiet pervaded the bar. Gareth had expected a raucous atmosphere filled with laughter and shouts, but the noise was reserved for hushed conversations among patrons. No one seemed to pay them much mind as they entered, a stark contrast to the lively ambience Gareth had anticipated. Penn approached the cruelly tall bar, pausing momentarily before she gestured for Gareth to join her. Not exactly. Well, if you don't mind, I can just... She motioned to lift him up onto a stool. He sighed, a flush of embarrassment creeping up his cheeks. Yeah, go ahead, he said, extending his primary arms in resignation. With a chuckle, Penn hoisted him up as if he were a small child, setting him down on the tall seat. Gareth could feel the bartender's amused gaze on him, heightening his embarrassment. Been a while, Penn, the bartender greeted, glancing at Gareth with curiosity. Who do we have here? Gareth. A friend, she nodded toward him. Gareth, huh? Pleasure. Any friend of Penn's is a friend of ours. You can call me Merton, or Chips if you'd like, the bartender said, extending a hand. Gareth shook it, intrigued by the portly man's warmth. Pleasure's mine, thank you. Merton grinned. It really is nice to see you, Penn. It's been a few years since you were in the system. Plenty of rumors and not much worth listening to, but he gestured to Gareth. Your friend here points to a few being true. I did step away, yeah, working as a security officer now aboard their ship. Been quite a ways outside human territory, Gareth explained, finding comfort in the camaraderie. Oh, Captain Gareth? Merton raised an eyebrow. First officer, Gareth corrected, a touch of pride in his voice. Our captain is a Corval by the name of Deke. He's actually a hoot. You'd like him. Deke. Gotcha, Gareth nodded, appreciating the camaraderie despite the unfamiliarity. Look at you, though, finding respectable employment. I so don't want to hear it, especially from you, Chips, Pen interjected, playfully rolling her eyes. Merton grinned at their banter. Well, what can I get you? I wouldn't be so lucky, Pen replied, her gaze lingering on the array of bottles behind the bar. I only bust her out for special occasions, so yes, you might just be. Think I've got about a quarter bottle left, Merton said, turning away to fetch the prized drink. I take back everything I've ever said about you, Chips. You're a saint. Just a small glass, please. Anything for you, he replied, glancing at Gareth as he prepared Pen's drink. What about you? Anything? Ah, no. Thank you, though, Gareth replied, still feeling a bit out of place. All right then. Merton crouched down to retrieve a bottle from a small cupboard in the wall, pouring Pen a clear liquid into a glass. She watched, anticipation sparkling in her eyes. As Merton slid the drink toward her, she gave him a thumbs up. Good stuff, she said, taking a small sip and closing her eyes in bliss. I don't know how, but that mother of his really knows how to make it. That's for sure. Truer words, she agreed, lifting her glass. How much do I? Merton raised a hand to stop her. I'm the house, and I'm not hearing anything on it, so don't even try. Not when it comes to him. With a resigned sigh, she nodded. Thanks, Chips. As Merton moved on to serve another table, Gareth felt a growing curiosity about this world. He had only been on the outskirts of human culture, and the stories that were slowly unraveling before him captivated his imagination. His thoughts drifted back to military nicknames. He had become fascinated by how humans created identities through stories, jokes, and shared experiences. After an hour of casual banter, Pen looked down at her glass, noticing it was nearly empty. Gonna head out, but let me hit the bathroom first. I'll be back. All right. I will not move, Gareth responded, glancing down at the tall stool and then back at her. She chuckled, understanding the struggle. It might genuinely be a dangerous fall if you tried to get down from the stool yourself, she noted before walking away. Gareth sat alone for a few minutes, feeling the uncomfortable weight of being the center of attention. The earlier sense of camaraderie faded as he noticed the men who had been loitering outside earlier now entering the bar. The leader strode with an air of confidence that made Gareth's stomach churn. He looked around the room before striding directly toward Gareth, staring him down. At first, Gareth didn't turn, hoping the man would just move on. However, after a few moments of silence, he finally turned and addressed the human. Yes? Is there anything wrong? The man continued to scrutinize him, his expression hardening. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke. Move. Excuse me? Gareth blinked, confused. My seat. Move. The two men behind him shifted forward, positioning themselves like wolves preparing to encircle their prey. I may be mistaken, but as far as I know, there's no owning one seat or another. That said, you can sit right here. I would be happy to get you something to drink, Gareth offered, trying to diffuse the tension. The man moved even closer, invading Gareth's personal space. Even through his respirator, Gareth could smell the acrid stench of sweat and alcohol on his breath. Move. Your ass. Gareth felt his heart race, anxiety flooding his system. He opened his mouth to respond, but his voice faltered. He could feel himself beginning to flush with embarrassment and panic, unsure of how to handle the escalating situation. Just then, Pen appeared at his side, a fierce look in her eyes that immediately took the edge off Gareth's fear. The other two men, sensing her presence, instinctively stepped back. Penn moved smoothly between Gareth and the aggressor, creating a protective barrier. She stared the man down, her gaze unflinching, before turning to Gareth. "You know, Gar, we never talked about it, but you'd find it interesting, I think, how these older bars got started. Want to hear it?" Penn, I don't think now is," he began, but she cut him off. "Oh, come on. I promise it's really interesting." "Penn." "Gareth." The way she said his name brooked no argument. He recognized that she was intent on diffusing the situation, and he knew better than to question her. "Sure," he replied cautiously. The man stood there, stunned at being ignored, but Penn continued as if he hadn't spoken. "Well, you probably noticed that we're in the guts of the station. These parts were the very first made. Everything else is expansion off of them bit by bit over the years. That makes the few bars here the oldest on the station. They popped up not long after humans first started exploring the system." "All right?" Gareth ventured, trying to keep his focus. She swept her gaze over the bar, her confidence unwavering. "As you are keenly aware, Gareth, we tend to lead with our military. Military almost always accompanies a survey group when they make for a new system. Scientists do what they need to, and we make sure no one tries to mess with them." She was staring at the man, her demeanor fierce and unyielding, but still addressed Gareth. "A consequence of this is that the first places, like bars, set up, cater to military types. These are called military bars, and a general unspoken rule is that they really only serve military or at least prefer non-military go elsewhere." I'm not too sure what you mean, Penn," Gareth admitted, still processing her words. "It means I can do something really cool," she said, a mischievous grin spreading across her face. "Want to see something cool?" "Penn, what are you?" "Come on, humor me," she insisted, and as she looked back at the man, her grin vanished, replaced with an intense seriousness. Fine. "Yes, sure," Gareth relented, curiosity piqued. Penn raised her glass to her lips and downed the last bit of ricilla. As the glass clinked against the bar, she dragged it in a slow circle before tapping it twice. Thunk! Thunk! Gareth was utterly lost until her two taps were met with a resounding response from the patrons in the bar. 30 or 40 taps echoed throughout the space, a collective chorus that cut through the atmosphere before falling into a tense silence. The silence was thick and charged, all eyes turning to focus on the man and his companions, who suddenly looked out of place. Gareth glanced around, realizing the entire bar had shifted its attention, waiting for Penn's next move. The man's bravado faltered as he scanned the faces of the patrons, growing uneasy. He attempted to interject, but Penn held up a finger, silencing him. She closed the distance between them, her calm demeanor belying the tension in the air. She rested the back of her right hand on his shoulder, palm facing upward, a gesture both casual and assertive. "You understand where you stand now?" "Spacer?" He began, his confidence draining away. "Good." Penn's hand, still resting lightly on his shoulder, slid to his face, patting his cheek softly as if he were a child. She turned back to Gareth, but when the man didn't move, she stopped, her voice low and firm. "You can leave now." The other two men, sensing the shift in the atmosphere, had already backed away, retreating toward the door. After a moment of stammering, the man complied and practically sprinted out, leaving the bar buzzing with the aftershock of Penn's confrontation. As silence fell again, Gareth looked at Penn, wide-eyed. "What was that?" She laughed, a sound full of relief and amusement. "Just a little reminder of who runs these parts, that's all. Don't let them intimidate you." Gareth couldn't help but smile at her bravado. "You certainly know how to handle yourself." "It's just part of the charm of being in places like this," she replied, her demeanor softening. "But let's talk about something else. What do you want to know?" Gareth, still reeling from the encounter, pondered for a moment. What's the story of this place, really? Why do people keep coming back? Pen took a sip of her drink, her expression thoughtful. Every bar has its own history, and Leeds Dead is no exception. It's not just a place to drink, it's a gathering point for stories, for memories shared over a drink. Each person who walks through that door has their own tale to tell, and those stories intertwine in ways that make this place special. Special how? Gareth pressed, intrigued by her passion. Well, Pen leaned in, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper. It's the kind of place where friendships are forged, where laughter echoes off the walls, and where people can forget their troubles for a while. It's the connections we make that keep us coming back. I can see that, Gareth admitted, a new appreciation for the bar dawning on him. So, what's your connection to it? I used to come here a lot when I was younger, she revealed, a hint of nostalgia creeping into her tone. I had a group of friends who'd gather here after missions, and we'd share our stories. It felt like home in a strange way. Home, Gareth repeated, the word hanging in the air. I've never had a place I could call home. I've only known ships and the vastness of space. Pen nodded, understanding flickering in her eyes. Home isn't always a physical place, sometimes it's the people you share your life with. You'll find yours, Gareth. You just need to keep searching. He contemplated her words, feeling a spark of hope. I want to experience that sense of belonging. You will, Pen assured him, her smile infectious. Just give it time. As the hours passed, they swapped stories, laughed, and discovered the little quirks that made them both unique. Pen shared tales of her time in the military, her camaraderie with her fellow soldiers, and the friendships she had forged along the way. Gareth, in turn, spoke of his experiences as a security officer, recounting the strange and often humorous encounters he had with the various species they encountered. The bar filled with life as more patrons trickled in, laughter and chatter blending into a harmonious backdrop. Each story shared wove a tapestry of connection, and Gareth began to feel a sense of belonging he had long yearned for. As the night wore on, Pen leaned back against the bar, her eyes sparkling with mischief. You know, I think you'd make a great bartender, Gar. You've got the charm for it. Me? A bartender? He chuckled, surprised by the thought. I'm not sure I'd have the patience for it. Oh, come on. You'd be great. You could pour drinks and tell stories, she teased, nudging him playfully. Maybe I'll take you up on that, he replied, a newfound confidence settling in. But only if you promise to come visit. Deal! Pen extended her hand for a shake, and Gareth grasped it firmly. It felt like a pact sealed by mutual understanding and friendship. Just as they settled back into their conversation, Merton appeared, a grin on his face as he surveyed the lively atmosphere. You two are a breath of fresh air. It's nice to see someone shaking things up around here. Gareth grinned back, feeling a warm camaraderie with the bartender. Thanks, Chips. It's been a great night. Pen raised her glass in salute. To new friends and old stories. To new friends and old stories, Gareth echoed, lifting his own glass. As their glasses clinked together, a feeling of warmth and belonging washed over him, filling the void he had carried for so long. As the night deepened, they continued to share stories, laughter echoing off the bar's walls, binding them together in a newfound friendship. In that moment, amidst the smoke and dim lights, Gareth realized that he had found something special, a place where he could belong, surrounded by people who understood the weight of their shared experiences. Hours slipped by, and Gareth found himself lost in conversation, the world outside fading away. He learned more about Pen's past, her military service, and the friends she had lost along the way. Each tale she shared painted a picture of resilience and strength that inspired him. Eventually, the bar began to thin out as patrons trickled away, leaving behind echoes of laughter and stories that lingered in the air. Gareth and Pen remained, enjoying each other's company, relishing the warmth of their connection. Do you think we'll come back here? Gareth asked, glancing around at the now empty bar. Of course. This place is a way of drawing people in, Pen replied, her eyes sparkling with excitement. Besides, I still have plenty more stories to share. I'd like that, he said sincerely. I feel like I've only scratched the surface. Pen grinned, her enthusiasm infectious. And I've got just the stories to fill you in. As they prepared to leave, Gareth felt a sense of gratitude wash over him. He had ventured into the unknown, and in doing so, had forged a connection that would last beyond the night. With Pen by his side, he was ready to embrace whatever adventures awaited them, armed with stories, laughter, and the promise of friendship. As they stepped back into the alleyway, the cool night air wrapped around them, and Gareth couldn't help but glance back at the bar, a smile playing on his lips. He knew he would return, not just for the stories or the drinks, but for the sense of belonging he had found within those walls. Ready for more adventures? Pen asked, her tone bright with anticipation. Absolutely, Gareth replied, his heart full of hope. Lead the way. With newfound determination, they walked side by side into the night, ready to face whatever challenges awaited them, their friendship the guiding light through the darkness of space.